start. Give it a minute, and then I'm going to put up the text and just log into Facebook Live, but then just share it to everybody that you possibly can, you know. Sometimes it gives it a minute. But yeah, so this is what we do.
Am I back?
Huh?
Am I back? I just stopped sharing.
I haven't
Facebook?
looked yet because that screen isn't up there quite as of yet. So hey guys, what's up? We're gonna go and start working. If you are at if you're on Twitch and YouTube, make sure you shoot me a comment because I cannot see you log in. I'm looking at Facebook Live. Hey Quentin, what's up? So we're gonna share a bunch of crap. So we'll be back in a minute. So but you know, you could still talk to us. So Quentin's also a long-time user of this, Greg. So it's pretty cool. Ugh. If anybody's noticed, I've been kind of goopy lately. There's like a call I had to make this morning, and I'm like, fuck, I'm sleeping all the time. Fuck this. I don't know what it is, but my brain is just shitty today.
I at least had the excuse of not having gone to sleep. You know, I took a 3-hour nap and then back at it. So
yeah, it's like going fuck like that.
My adrenal glands are screwed from many coffees and all that jazz.
There we go. Adrenal glands hurt today. That's what I'm going to put it as. Okay. I'm going to put that up there. So, yeah, guys, what's up? Hey, Mondo, what's up? What's up, y'all? Hey, man. So, yeah. You know, and also, Greg, there's like a few second delay. So if you don't see it immediately, it'll come.
Yeah.
So, guys, also, I put up some links of Gregory's that you want to check out. He's a great artist. He does Doc Holiday, and I'll have him explain that in a minute once we go completely live. But also, just to let you know, to support, you know, there's my Patreon and stuff. Throw $1 and everything like that. So, you know, there we go on that part. So let me go share it to a group, and then we will start again. So hold on. I'm also like doing this. Oh, god damn it. I shared it to the wrong group. There's this one group where there's absolutely no profanity, and I have to like, because Facebook switches it around a lot, so it's annoying that way. So it's like, oh, stop it, guys. But I like to show people across the board what I do, and then do that. Life of an artist. Although I'm doing a kid's book right now with one of my friends, so that's kind of cool. So anyway, yeah, so we're kind of, pardon our dust a little bit. We're working on things, and I hope you guys are having fun. It's almost Friday, which is nice, and I'll be over at Ontario Comic Con in California. I say that because I'm not Canadian, so I just want to let you know I'm not going to Canada. I know some of you in Canada might be excited. I don't know if you guys are, but either way, it's cool. So, part of dispute. Go away. Okay, cool. So, let me just go to this group and delete it, because I'm a moderator of another group. And sometimes I just don't want to go and share some things. So I don't want to abuse my status.
Don't do that.
Right? Okay. Hey, Lawrence. Hey, Sandra. So, hey, Lawrence Hubbard of Real Deal is on. I know you were all, like, hitting that up for that. I'm going to go. Yeah, he's on there, dude. He always talks. Hold on a minute. Let me just hit the drawing thing. And then let me take this main thing off. And we are good to go. So, yeah, Lawrence, you got a fan on here, motherfucker. So, there you go. I'm having spicy beef strips, Mexican mixed veggies, and hard-boiled eggs. Hey, Sandra. How's it going? Oh, stop this. 10 million people are like, I love it, but Jesus, sometimes it got... So, anyway. So...
May I say, while we have a chance, Sir, the only deal is the real deal, and I bow to your. I am merely a kohai to your sen. You are my sensei, sir. You are the man times 3,000.
Yeah.
Your book is a piece of not just history, but is you know required reading for anybody who's either making their own comics or talking about their reality in comic form. And
Lawrence said, "Fuck." Say what,
so
bitch?
so I am so glad to now finally be only 1 degree of separation from you, sir.
Yeah, like Steve and I, we broke bread with this guy, and well, Lawrence and I, we were friends. I met him at San Diego Comic Con about a few years back. And
Yeah.
hey, Amy, what's up? So if I actually interrupt, I'm saying hi to people that come up. So that's what we got going on. Hey, Douglas, what's up? Douglas has current nightmares about fucking cunt man. That's another one. So what ends up happening? I'm actually going to be drawing kid-friendly shit today. So yeah, so I met Lawrence and we traded books and shit, and we've been fans from each other's work and everything. So yeah, so he's the real deal, and like there's all these comic books down in LA, obviously. So like I hooked him up with like Mike Wellman of the Comic Bug, and Mike Wellman is co-partnered and owns like a couple of other comic shops, like both Comic Bugs. There's Eddie D'Angelini, and he actually is a co-owner of Heidi Ho Comics, and I think there's two or three other
Oh yeah.
locations.
That's like historic.
Yeah, yeah. So I know these guys, and I haven't had a signing at Heidi Ho. I got to talk to Eddie about that, but there's but he's had signings over at fucking Comic Bug, and I hooked him up to that, and it was so funny because Mike Wellman like drank a fuck ton of absinthe and passed out at one point during the panel, and it's just like he's like the real deal, and then Mike Wellman gets all drunk, and Mike Wellman goes like this: "I got bitches, I got bitches." And
Imagine
Lawrence
that,
was just
that
like,
would happen drinking alcohol. That's crazy.
he drank it on an empty stomach. I said, "Why did you do that, Mike? That's not smart." Yeah. Lawrence draws Real Deal Comics. Look up Real Deal Comics, Comix. Michael Wagner. Hey, Michael. Is he your friend or mine? I'm trying to remember.
Mike Wagner is
Mike Wagner.
very, very good friend of mine. He's a comics guy, originally from Texas, moved here to Vermont, and we co-created the Vermont Comic Creators Group, which is a arts organization and that represents like well, now we're at 186 members, cartoonists, animators,
Yeah.
mostly a lot of DIY comics people,
Yeah.
and yeah, so and he makes a bunch of his own books. He's got a great book called El Diablo Azul, and it's a Mexican wrestler, monster hunter
Oh, fuck yeah.
character, and he's hooked up with. There's a lot of indie press, DIY, like small house publishers that he edits for, letters for, puts books together, inks, draw, he does everything. So
Yeah. Yeah. I do that with
it's
Demon Bitch myself, so I know. Yeah. But that's the thing. So it's like you guys should check out Greg's stuff. It's a link up there. There's also another one that I actually did not put up. Or I put it up in the text, but I'll put up your Facebook for Mountain Madness, Doc Holiday. So, I'm all fucked up today. I'm
you
sorry,
can
guys.
also find if you're kind of more Facebook centric, like if you go to the about.me Gregory Giordano link that
Yeah.
Christie put up, and thanks for putting up my links.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All my links are on that page. If you can't find something for some reason, you can also go to my Facebook art page, which is the Art of Gregory Giordano on Facebook.
Yeah, his artwork's really cool. Yeah, and
Thanks.
yes, Steve was telling me you were a huge fan of Raw Dog. Douglas says I need to know the origin of the Raw Dog nickname, and I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure if you ask the girls he's been with, I'm sure they could tell you. And Lawrence is like, fuck you. Like that's how he's like, fuck you. Yeah, but Steve, we have a mutual friend in common, Stephen Fortner. He's now doing Fortner Media, and he used to be a senior editor of Keyboard Magazine. I think we could say that,
Yes.
right? So we are an
Yes.
illustrious crew here. So we all hung out together like pimps at one point.
That is correct.
Yeah. Like Lawrence and I, we hung out at Bourbon Steakhouse, and I hung out with Steve at Bourbon Steakhouse. So it's like kind of I sort of all hung out together with them. But when Steve was over there, I think not for NAM, it was another one, but he stayed in downtown LA. We hung out all together, and Steve got to know him. And Steve was telling me, yeah, he needs to know fucking like he loves real deal comics. You're going to get me fired, says one guy. I don't know. I put Cutman up a lot, dude. And then Quentin William White. So, yeah. Also, Greg is engaged, but he's also working on a tight deadline. So, you may want to just holler at him just to holler at him. Say, hey, what's up? Oh, thanks, man, for liking that. So, yeah, but yeah, so I do a cartoon called Demon Bitch. I'm not drawing it now. I'm actually doing a kid's book, which is hilarious. One of my heroes is Johnny Ryan. Let me also pin that too. I can only pin one at a time, but I'll pin that comment. But one of my favorite cartoonists is Johnny Ryan, who does this just amazingly foul shit. Are you familiar with John? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a copy of. I got one of the chapters of. What's it called again?
Prison Pit.
No, Prison Pit. Yeah, I got one of the.
Yeah.
Translations of it. The cartoon, the animated version was, I thought, pretty good actually.
I wish they did more. I wish they did more.
Yeah, it's just like everything. It's just really expensive, and if it doesn't catch, then they're not gonna throw any more money down.
It ain't giving out nothing but hard dick and bubble gum. That's what Lawrence said. They're like fucking.
Right on. Awesome.
Yeah, but Lawrence is friends with Johnny Ryan, so it's like I got to meet him a few times.
Yeah, right.
Johnny, I don't know if you met Johnny Ryan, but Johnny Ryan's like really quiet. Like he's like, but he's really nice. Don't get me wrong, but he's like. So once he drew an alien nutsack in one of the, because I have the whole series of Prison Pit. So he drew the alien nutsack in one of them. I said, I really love your alien nutsacks. He says, there's more where that came from. So he's a cool guy.
Lawrence, I'm gonna send you a friend request on Facebook. If you want to accept it, that's fine. That'd be great. If you don't, then I'll just follow you and stalk you from.
Lawrence is pretty cool. I'm pretty sure he'll be fine. Not just as long as you're not a raging Nazi. Although one of the guys that he's affiliated with, no, he's not a Nazi. He's actually he's a black comics book writer and author. I think he's a comic book artist. I friended him too. No, he actually found like the old American Nazi Party comic book of White Man. The guy is black, by the way, so I'm just giving a background here. And he shared it, and it was White Man, and we were fucking laughing. Because it was so bad.
Right. We
do not condone Nazism on this channel. We like to only serve to mock them. Just as a thing. And it's like, the man, the legend, Johnny Ryan. I showed Quentin the 6911 of Johnny Ryan. And he says, who's Johnny Ryan? So I'm like, well, with Johnny Ryan, you can never go soft. You got to go hard. So you just copied and pasted and sent it. He's like, and Quentin just started fucking laughing.
Yeah.
Breaking them off something proper. Yeah, Johnny is real quiet, but his art is insane. Hey, Armando, what's up? Cool, my brother. Lawrence is a cool guy. Like, he's a total, like, nice guy. And I'm sure Lawrence will say, oh, that's so nice you're pumping him. I'm like, no, fuck you, asshole. That's how we are. Sometimes he calls me demon bitch and all that. But,
With affection.
yeah, like, I showed him the Hobo Hitler story that I had. No, I'm not obsessed with Hitler. There's actually a few real-life events that had happened. And he was fucking choking. So what it was is that I wrote this fucked up story. Okay, so we have a friend named Tony. And if you ever come into town, Greg, if you ever love whiskey or bourbon, this guy has the shit. Like, Tony is awesome. And Tony loves a lot of artists. And, like, I got to know him through a mutual friend of ours, Karina, who knows Chuck Patton. Now, Chuck Patton is the most prolific guy in animation. Yeah, so I know him too. I'm cool with him too. I'll be at the con with him. And
I don't know, but I mean, I know that, you know.
Yeah, you know the name. Like, I don't know if you. Well, I mean, you just have no idea. The world is short, and he travels outside of of California a lot. But so I met him, and he said, like, Tony at first was going like, I don't know if I should watch my language around her. And then after 3 minutes, I said, cunt. And he said, okay, we're cool. So I introduced him to Lawrence. And actually, Tony got really obsessed during the Kickstarter of Demon Bitch of She Sucks. because he started making fucked up drinks about it. And so we're working on a book together on that. I haven't talked that much about it because it hasn't been done and I need to finish it, but it's just been held up. But anyway, so there's a Kickstarter run, so I introduced him to Lawrence to Tony, and Lawrence was so fucking happy because this was just like, he's a good Scotch man, whiskey man, booze man. No, we're not all alcoholics. We just like good shit. So I'll have to introduce you to Tony if you ever come to California. So, Demon Bitch for short. Cool, my brother. I have not seen Johnny in like 15 years. Oh, yeah, you told me you liked him. Hey, Daniel, how's it going? Chuck Patton, no relation to George Patton? I don't think so. I don't think so, except it might be one of those things. But anyway, so, hey, Jared, what's up? So, what we ended up doing was, I know there's a fucking point to this. So, anyway, so, yeah, you can, like, hang out and drink with us and shit,
That would be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Tony got to know Lawrence, and Lawrence was fucking happy. Like, this guy has top shelf, like, gin and shit, right? And he's a wonderful host, like Tony. He's part Italian, so if you're part Italian, there you go. Like, you fucking all can be Italian bros. Yeah, but, yeah. So, Lawrence, we all hung out and everything. So, we've been at parties at Tony's house, and we've hung out, and we've, like, just drank and had a good time and everything. So, Tony's excellent. Tony Tilton. So, yeah. So, okay, so this whole thing, I went into this preface about Tony, sorry. I'm a bit fuzzy. But, so the reason why Hobo Hitler came up is that one time Tony came by the Hive, and sometimes I work shifts there to offset rent and everything. And I'm there because he had business in downtown LA. He does metal fabrication.
Oh, that's right. You were talking about this yesterday, too.
Yeah. Oh, okay, never mind. But anyway, so...
No, that's all right, because I'm sure there are people who haven't heard the story, but...
Okay, so
It's a great story.
Yeah. So what it is, I took a... Yeah, I'm a positive person. I took a negative homeless bum situation and made it funny. So, yeah, Tony... And the also background is Tony accidentally went out with an anti-Semite. He didn't know, okay? It wasn't like he was looking. He said, I don't know what is it with me. Do I look like I attract racists?
That happens. That happens.
Yeah, like he said that's... So the story is that when he went out on this date with this girl, and like, to his favorite Italian place, so they're ordering it, and then, they didn't get her order quite right, so she kind of said something offhand about Mexicans. Now, he has a lot of friends that are Mexican that are white passing, or maybe there's some... So he probably didn't know. I'm like, okay, maybe she's just making a comment. And then later on, they're talking, they're kind of laughing, and they're flirting, and then all of a sudden, her face changes to disgust, like... And then she just said, what do you think of the Jews?
Like, actually, like, made it a point of conversation.
Yeah, and he's like,
What do you think about them?
Yeah, he said, they're a... Well, discriminated minority. I mean, I don't know. There are people that have been oppressed. And he looked and he saw a dude with a yarmulke on his head. And then she said, and then she launches in to a bunch of Holocaust denial shit. And he's like, wait a minute. He said, the neighbors across the way, they were survivors of the Holocaust. They had that tattoo in their arm, They were Jewish people with tattoo in their arm, a couple. And he said, my grandpa... And his buddies, like, liberated people from the camps. There is no way you can convince me. So they just went on, and he just said, you know what? Get the fuck out of here. And she called him the F word, the F-A-G-G-O-T word. And he says, I don't think you know what that means. He was like, get the fuck out. I just want to enjoy my cannoli.
Yeah.
So anyway.
It's always interesting when a lot of those people who are actually that kind of active... anti-Semitic that way, or anything, actually, any kind of, like, deep racism. I'm not talking about, like, the racism that everybody has that is white or in a position of authoritative power, where, they'll be like, oh, I didn't know that was racist. I'm not talking about that stuff. I'm talking about, like, active racism, like this person you're talking about. It seems like now there's this, like, corollary with, like, the F-A-G word. So, like, if you don't approve of that, you must be that. And then, which is, of course, like, really ridiculous, too, because that's another oppressed group that, maybe you might be like, well, yeah, actually, I am. What the fuck? Who gives a shit? But, like, that's the only launch they can go into, because they think that everybody is, number one, straight, and number two, completely, like, gonna be terrified by that word, right? Like, because that's the best they have. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, okay, you might want to rethink
Yeah.
your
Hey,
strategy.
hey,
But, yeah.
Jeremy. Hey, Jared. What's up? Yeah, the hive does rock. I can't drink that shit. Turns me insane. Oh, good. You should drink more of that shit. So, now I fuck with Douglas. Douglas is cool. Top shelf Tony, the man. Yeah, that's what fucking Lawrence calls him. He's just so happy when he goes to his house because we get treated like kings and royalty there. And I always try to bring stuff for Tony. Like I made a Japanese cheesecake, the jiggly one. And he said, "So
Mm-hmm.
what do you want me to bring?" He says, "Bring me that." I'm like, "All right, fine," because we taste like we sample all
Sure.
sorts of shit. So it's rare shit too. So what ends up happening? So Tony comes by the hive, and then we hang out because I told him I could hang out. That's fine. It's cool. And then I close up and I said, "What do you want to grab for dinner?" And Bottega Louie's nearby. So he said, "Okay, let's walk there." So we walk there, right? And then this guy who strangely looks like an ex I dated that was a piece of shit. Steve's met him or heard of him once. This was 10, 20 years ago. Real piece of shit, I'll just say that. But he killed himself, and I don't feel bad about it because he's an asshole. So I mean, that's the one of the rare times I'll ever say that because he was a real piece of shit. That's not
Yeah.
my normal thing. So what ended up happening, it looks like him, but I know he's dead. But it looks like him, and he's kind of like bum, but not quite crusty bum, but he's just about homeless looking. So he comes up and he says, "Hey guys, what language are you speaking in?" And I'm like going, we ignore him. We're like, whatever, fuck off. That was stupid, right? And then all of a sudden, and it's right in front of Bottega Louie. So we just stop, and Tony stops for a minute and said, "That was interesting." And I said, "What, dude?" And he said, "He just said you guys must be Jews." And I said, "Well, that's why he's homeless." And then I go
Yeah.
in and I message my friend Rose, who is Jewish, and I told her what happened, and she just wrote back, "Hobo Hitler." So
Exactly. And then that was it.
yeah, I just and then Derek Jefferson, who did a Kickstarter for Homeless Homeboy, who's based off like a character, a friend he knew in his life, kind of. And he says, I want Homeless Homeboy to fight Hobo Hitler. I said, okay, give me a moment. Let me kind of think of the backstory, and hence the backstory. I've told it a few times, but won't get into it. But it's a very fucking funny backstory about Hitler. Like he's such a piece of shit. Like he can't even ascend into the Nazi party. He's just like at this low level peon level. And then he gets his
Right.
ass kicked during the riots because he said very stupid things in a place where he should not have been. I am not waking up naked again. Oh, the shit that we say on this show. So, anyway. So, you guys should check out the Doc Holiday comment. I got to skim it a little bit. I
Yeah. Yeah.
was kind of busy, and I don't know. I've just not been feeling up to par. So, but the art is really good, man. So he's
Thanks.
on.
Thanks.
His username is also FlameApe on Instagram. You have a Twitter, right, or no?
Yeah, I have Twitter. Everything now is Gregory Giordano art. The only stuff that's Flameate still. Boy, I don't know. It's just I used to use that handle. That was my original internet handle, and I think it's funny that now we're all old enough. Like I'm 52, so I can say like I have an original internet handle and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And I only had one for the whole 30 years or whatever it is. Um, but I came to realize that branding yourself is far more important for longevity reasons,
Yeah.
and I just decided to start changing all that stuff up. But yeah, if you look for Flameape, you'll probably get all that connective tissue will still be there. But
Connective
mostly, I
tissue.
just go by Gregory C. Giordano art.
Yeah.
And
He
you'll
is.
find everything there.
He's like, I am not waking up naked again. Douglas wants to know. He says he wants this comment. I'm assuming you want the Doc Holiday one, and he's asking, are you related to Dick?
No, and big respect for being somebody who actually knows who Dick Giordano is. So thank you. Yeah, no, I am not. Giordano is not that uncommon a name, but it is weird though. I think I am, even though I'm like not pro like industry comics by any stretch. I think I might be the only other Giordano that's in comics, which is weird.
Hmm.
At least I've tried to find other people, even like indie creators, haven't been able to find anybody. So, yeah, I wish I met Dick Giordano once when I was, I think maybe 15 or 16, something like that, freshman, sophomore in high school.
Oh, yeah.
Went to a convention in one of those small, kind of like small scale comic shows back in the old days in the 80s, and it was in upstate New York somewhere, and he was there, and he was a real gentleman, and he looked at my portfolio, and gave me a lot of talking, and and of course I was 16 or 15. My stuff was just garbage, but he was super nice and very encouraging and stuff. So he was a terrific guy.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the thing too. It's like
Very
oh,
encouraging.
Quentin
Yeah.
asked about how my cats are fine. I have a black and ginger one, and one's an asshole, one is a big ass. So yeah, the girl is the black cat, and the boy is the ginger cat, and boy's name is Spam, the girl's name is Ink, and she has a skull butthole. No, they're fine. Are you really? So I once took a class with his nephew in a comics class years ago. Oh, cool. So
Interesting.
yeah, so sometimes I like to read out the comics and interact with people. But yeah, so yeah, I'm
Yeah.
kind of drawing this shit, but yet not.
Yeah. I'm sorry if I'm not present over there to see anybody's questions. I'm working furiously hard on a deadline, and I'll share the screen when I have stuff that's actually look that will
That
look
isn't under
interesting. So
NDA type shit, right?
no, 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 not at all. It's although there's some actually it's a first comic that I've worked on where there's actually HIPAA stuff. So it's like a different kind of it's not NDA, but it's medical because it's for an agency that deals with disabled people. And that's this whole thing that's been kind of interesting. The paid gigs that I've done are not like industry comics or anything.
Hmm.
They're actually non-profit based projects. Um, so it's been kind of interesting to do comics that are at the behest of people that are trying to do some real good work in the community, in different communities. So
Uh-huh.
um, rather than it being about comics about people hitting each other with their superpowers or their whatever. I mean, the comics that I do that are genre, which is what motivates me to want to do comics. That's my own projects.
Yeah. Well, me,
Like Holiday Mountain Madness, the book I've been working off and on for
I
a
mean,
while.
luckily I've made enough money off of my comics, but I'm not very by means rich. But it's like I made enough money to say, oh yeah, people really like this shit. And
Oh
when
yeah,
I showed
yeah,
Lawrence Demon Bitch first, Lawrence was like, fucking, this thing is awesome, you know?
yeah. I mean, the thing is, anybody who's watching in the um, in the chat area, if you want to do comics because you really want to do them because it's a medium that turns you on and stuff. But don't do them because you're there for the getting rich scheme, because that way leads to madness. It's unless you're good enough, basically unless you're good enough to get headhunted by DC, Marvel, Dark Horse, Dynamite, something like that, then or convert, like, you have material that qualifies for like a major book publisher, you know, Simon Schuster or something like that, to pick up your like autobiographical book, or something like that, for more like traditional bookseller trade or YA category stuff. Unless you're fitting in those areas, almost very few people get up the ladder doing their kind of indie transmission thing and make a bunch of money. So you got to do it because this is this thing that really turns you on. You want to make it, like your band or films or whatever,
It,
and you'll be a lot happier if
no.
you keep it real like that. If you just keep it really structured like that in your head.
Well, even Douglas says you won't get rich working for them. That is true. Like I know
Yeah.
quite a few of them. Like they make a nice enough living, but they still have to struggle. But I don't know. I think it's like now artists have so much more power than they do. It's just they don't know what to do with it. And sometimes what I do is like when I talk to
Sure.
artists and I mentor them. I mean, I'm not saying I'm making the big bucks, but the thing is that
Uh,
my reach is like getting out there, so it has that
oh
potential.
yeah. Yeah.
But there's a few adjustments in thinking, like just because you put your book up on Amazon, it's not going to sell itself. Just you need to use it as a
Right.
distribution platform and comicsology. It's like, yes, sometimes you have that advantage as DC and Marvel because, you have that advertisement power. I mean, for me, it's like weird because like as of last year, I won the 2018 Ringo Award for Best Anthology with my team. And sometimes when I've
Yeah.
said it, it's like,
Yeah.
oh fuck, and it's like
Yeah.
it kind of startled me, but it's like it's a notable thing. But I do believe that this is what I'm going to say. is that if you keep plugging at your work, people will get to know you. It's like being a doctor. You just got to work at it. And
Yes.
and you got to go and
Yeah.
interact with your fans. And
Yeah.
one of the biggest things I don't like about what some artists do is that they'll put a piece up and say, "What do you think of this? What do you think I should change?" I'm like, I've noticed that yes, you do have that audience participation, but it drives you batty as an artist. For me, like I've noticed that if I just put a piece of work up there, most of the time people like it more than they hate it. And if they hate it, they really fucking hate it, which makes me laugh anyway because fuck it, I elicited that emotion. So I think it's just you got to play your cards right. I think as an artist, but I mean, like with any,
it's a complex synthesis of being super realistic about where it may not go,
oh,
right? Where it most likely will not go. Hustling like a son of a bitch, and being selfish and self-absorbed enough to say, well, I still deserve it, even though those issues of like I probably will not make it are at play. I still deserve it, and I'm still going to try. And there's tons, and then it's like, and then repeat the hustling, right? I mean, wouldn't you say
I
that's
think
kind of
I
the
wouldn't
deal?
agree with being selfish and self-absorbed. I think essentially
Well,
people that are,
I don't mean in the pejorative sense. I just mean that in the survival sense.
well, I
You know?
mean, even then, not in a survival sense. You're just being realistic about what works for you. For me, I think why the fuck did it change to black? I think for me, it's just like, look, like with other artists, I tell them, they say, well, I have social anxiety and stuff and everything. I said, well, okay. You're not here to be a car salesman because a lot of the times they built it up in their head. I have to be this dynamic car salesman. He says he hates Cunt Man. Yes, we all do. He's an asshole. Cut character that I have. So, but the thing is that how you sell yourself is just you just talk to people and you just know in a 30-second thing, like, okay, this is this book that I did. What can I do to describe it in 30 seconds?
Yeah.
And for me, when I do a pitch, I've seen people take schools of aggressive hardcore pitching to very soft core, and they make it and they throw these words at you where you just can't digest them. When in reality, like I sit here, I said, okay, what can I go to talk about my book in this amount of time and not be fucking bored about saying it the same shit 70 million times per day? So I just sell my book and people pick up on that. Like, you really have to start enjoying what you're doing. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there are some jobs that you're not going to be woohoo, but I think if you really go and be realistic about what you want, like be really realistic about what you want, but understand there's more than one way to go about doing it. I think that makes you happier and you actually get the jobs you want more, or at least the clients that you can work with. So, you have to kind of get to that place of zen. And so, I mean, it's not bad to want to work for Marvel and DC, but do understand that it's not the only people that you can do. I mean, working for a publisher, that's great, but you can always self-publish. The big thing about publishers is that they have the distribution, they have the money to do it, but I also use Amazon as a platform to publish my things because when I see people like take off like over 3/4 of their house to like hold a bunch of their inventory, I'm like, okay, I can't have that. And then some of them have to say, well, I gotta go and I like, yeah, I've got to go and like store this. It's like, well, this saves me storage space. I'll just order when I need the books instead of running a Kickstarter and doing $10,000 to print up all these things. Now, sometimes you need to do that, and I'm not saying that's wrong. It's just it's not the only way to do it. So I'm not trying to brag, but I can pitch my ass off. I'm sure you can, Douglas. But yeah, I mean, it's just like all you got to do is talk to people. And I even put to artists or anybody that creates to say, well, I'm not that great of a seller and all that. And I said, well, okay, but here's the thing. Would you be happier? Would you be upset? Like, here's the thing. You got two decisions to make. And unfortunately, in reality wise, you kind of have to put this up. See you, Lawrence. So, one of the things you got to say is that, okay, look at it this way. You have social anxiety, and that's a very real thing. But but you're going to be miserable if you don't sell your books. Like, you have everything out there, you do it all right, but then it's like, why is no one buying my shit? How come nobody's noticing? I'm talented. It's like, you're very well talented, but you're one of millions of people out on the internet. So how do you make yourself known? You got to talk to people. You have to talk
Yeah.
to people
Well,
anyway.
yeah. I mean, this is the thing. It's all, and there are a lot of people who can't. They that's just not their bag, and that's why it goes as far as it goes and no farther, right?
Yeah, I mean, you
Um,
have to also do
and
other shit, like put stuff up, but just talking to a person. Yeah.
yeah, Yeah, I mean, it's just, like, we're talking about just like, essentially, this is just about the width and breadth of human nature. And not everybody can do selling. Some people can juggle two jobs. Some people can't get out of their own way. There's just all these different permutations. And I think that the thing is, like, and I'm no expert, I'm not great. The only thing I'm really good at is I'm not afraid to talk to people,
Yeah.
and I'm not afraid to be, like, positive about the quality of what I do.
Yeah.
Um, um, but, like, I'm by no means as I by no means have the level of hustle that a lot of other people do. And one of the reasons because I'm disabled and I have chronic health problems.
Yeah.
The other one is, so that knocks a crap load of energy out of my um, day or week or random, cycle of time, and then I've got other things I got to do to try to just
Mm.
pull a little money in. So then by the time it's done, sometimes I can hustle a lot. Sometimes I don't. I also
Mm.
run this with my friend Mike Wagner, Vermont Comic Creators, which is a sort of an ad hoc art organization. We hang out
Mm.
physically. We hang out on Facebook and stuff. So there's a
Yep.
lot of energy trying to grow that with the other people in the group. So by the
Mm.
time I'm done, I don't have what I had when I was in my 20s or 30s, but but I'm also, there's other factors too, which is like the work that I do has a certain commercial vector on it that I understand why and where it sells. Like I go plow through a bunch of the books at a show, and I know
Mm.
why. I know why the Holiday Not Madness book sells. It's
Mm.
good writing, but there's things about the art that make it sell, but there's a whole bunch of stuff about my art that does not place it in a bunch of other venues, right?
Mm.
Um, I understand that stuff at 50 years old, and
Mm.
I push on the strengths, and I don't
Yep.
worry about the other stuff because, and that's part of the mix too. I mean, that's another factor that can throw people off the rails is like they don't really know what their work is,
Yeah.
and they don't really know what their products are in the metaphor of their work, right?
Mm.
Like you can even have three styles. You can have like a commercial style that applies to what kids stuff might look like. You can do
Mm.
storyboards that be really generic. You can do, art for product stuff, and then you can have your personal comics sort of work style.
Mm.
But you have to really know what those are, and you have to really know where those pegs are going to fit. It's not just like some scattershot thing that people, and I think that's where a lot of inexperienced artists are also the hit walls. They don't even know they're hitting
Yeah.
because they just don't know what their work is like.
Yeah. I mean,
And but
yeah.
that's the work of an agent too, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
because that's like where you have to like suddenly take your artist hat off and then you got to put your agent hat on and
Yeah.
somehow have this global thought process on what your work is and how to sell it, right? And that's a
Yeah.
lot of work.
I mean, it's just
There's a
like
lot of
sometimes
hats. There's
also
a lot
you
of
just
hats.
got to put it out there and just see what sticks. Hey, Walter.
Yeah.
Hey, Edie. So there's a lot of things, like a lot of factors. And the thing is, I think what doesn't help is like in the age of multimedia, they make it so like the language so esoteric and weird that they don't
Mm-hmm.
really like people kind of like their heads blur and they think I can't do it when really it's just like they said, well, you got to find your audience, and there's like
Yeah.
easy ways to propagate that too, like, but luckily I had friends that told me how to do it, but it would be stuff that I would have easily have overlooked. But now it's it's um it's actually a good thing now that I did. But I mean, again, it's not like you have to be a rocket scientist. It's or hire like a $300 per hour person. I'm not saying they don't deserve that paycheck. They got to eat too, like we do. But I just point out that that's not, there's something that you could do on your thing to get your ass out there,
Oh yeah.
especially. I mean,
Yeah.
I also have
I
groups too.
Yeah, I just think that there's just a number of people out there who are not going to be able to go past a certain point, and
Or yeah,
and that I mean that's just the nature of anything. I don't care if it's music or
Yeah, I think,
writers or whatever. There's a huge base to the pyramid. There's a narrow point, and people are in that continuum from the bottom to the top. And there's just going to be, you could publish, and probably you should, a book or do classes and all this stuff. And even if people like paid you the money and did all the steps, probably only less than 10% of the people would actually engage the material, and maybe less than 2% of the people who engage it properly will be successful.
well, I think
We're
also,
in a numbers game, I think, with that stuff.
in a way, yes and no, but I also am kind of under the suspicion that, also there's not a one size fits all marketing for everybody. And I think
Yeah.
that's the big issue because, like, when people pay marketing people, there's a certain level of the same corollaries or the same amount of stuff that you got to do, like, that's pretty consistent to make it successful. But how you go about implementing those, I think people go like, oh, I have to be just this way. It's like, no, you don't have to be just this way. Like, I've told people, like, just get it out there, just put it out there and talk to people. And I leave it as simple as that, and they go like, oh shit. So they grow from it. But I mean, it depends on the person, what they're willing to do. I think it's more of what people are willing to do. And I'm not saying just because you're not willing to do this, you're a loser. It's just that it is what it is.
No.
There's.
Yeah, I just feel like a lot of times there's it's sort of like there's not an infinite amount of resources in terms of consumers out there, and also not everybody has the ability to pull all those levers, even if they know exactly which ones to pull. And then, of course, there's this other part, which is like, quality. There's like a kind of intersection of quality, like zeitgeist, and uh, content, meaning the actual material itself. So it's like you could have like the best thing. You could have the best. I don't know. You could have the best demon bitch in the universe, right? You could draw it like some like a drawing god, but if it's not the right moment in time where people are ready for that thing for whatever reason, then it's not going to do well. You could draw it. You could draw that book or make that music as good or bad as you want, but if it's the right moment and people are like totally poised for it, boom, everybody loves it, shares it, everything like that. I'm not saying that there aren't, the secrets of marketing don't exist, but that's also part of it too, and that's the luck part. It's like, obviously you made a book that not only works and has really good style. I like your work, and it's got that real punch. It reminds me a lot of Roberta Gregory too.
I'm trying to remember what Roberta Gregory did. What did she do? I
She
remember
did
more.
Her biggest book was Naughty Bits, which
I think I've heard about that one.
Yeah, that's like a key post. I would say it's like post feminist because it's like I think 90s. I'm pretty sure she came up with like Julie Doucette and a few of those people, like Post Weirdo magazine.
Yeah.
Of that stuff.
Because I remember
Carol A. I think sometime too.
There's also Bitchy Bitch. I'm trying to remember who did it. Like, Scott Shaw actually compared my work to Bitchy Bitch. I don't know if you're familiar with Scott Shaw.
Bitchy, Scott Shaw was.
He didn't do it. I'm just saying he told me about it.
No. Yeah, Bitchy Bitch was might have been Roberta. That might have been the character that was in, or one of the characters in Naughty Bits. I think that's Roberta.
I think that is her. Yeah. Okay. Now that I remember.
But I mean, like,
hey, Lori.
So you're doing this really good job. You got this really great. The style's got a lot of activity, a lot of energy. It's well drawn. It's got all these like funky original components to it. The character is extremely different, right? And the way that you're handling these single. It's not exactly gag panels, but it's pretty much like that kind of idea, that short burst stuff. But there's also story to it. There's a lot of design, all that stuff. But like, let's say it just wasn't the right moment. That might be some obscure thing, right? But you hit the nail precisely. Like you managed to come out with it at the right time, when there were some venues on the internet that are really open to it, and then also open to the material itself, right?
Yeah.
that's really, those are the things that are rare. And it's like you can teach everybody about marketing all you want. Doesn't mean they're going to buy that yogurt cup just because like you put all the energy into the yogurt cup. But it also has to be the right time for yogurt cups. You know what I mean? And there's all these other kind of like elements to it.
Well, I
I think
also,
it makes it
yeah,
exciting too.
yeah.
Like because it's like who knows? Who knows how the hell it's going to go? I mean, it could
Well,
go half a dozen different ways.
personally too, it's like the thing is
Nobody
that,
gets a guarantee. I guess is what I mean. Like nobody gets a you know, I did all the things. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't necessarily matter. Like,
well,
it may not happen anyway.
I also think too that it also depends on the person that it's like you got to really follow your gut. Personally, I've noticed that following your gut is the thing. Like, what do you want to do in life? And it's not like what you want to do in this particular moment. It's just like for me, just I felt driven to draw shit like this. Just something in me
Yeah.
says draw the shit. Oh, by the way, hi Lori. Oh yeah, that's cool. Like got home from physical therapy. I hope it was cool. But for me, it's like when I didn't listen to it, I got sidetracked. I got looked over. So when I just said, fuck this, I'm just going to draw what I'm going to draw. That's just
Yeah.
what it is. And
Yeah, you're putting. It doesn't seem like there's any contrivance to your storytelling. I think I feel like because I went on Tapas or whatever and I went through a bunch of them. And I don't get this idea that like you sat there and calculated and you were like, okay, I'm gonna come up with a character who's antisocial and I'm gonna check off these boxes. Like it's not cynical to me. I feel like you're really putting your honesty in there.
yeah, because the thing is that it was based off some bitch I fucking hated, to be honest. It was just like she was this
Yeah,
horrible
perfect.
person.
Perfect way to go.
Yeah, and it wasn't like just, oh, I'm just mad. It's just like, okay, well, I'm just going to mock it. And guess what
Yeah.
happened? I mean, now it's just like people say, oh, I can't believe this happened. It's like, no, this fucking happens. And again, I
Sure.
never sat down and thought, well, I need to gear it towards women and all that. No, I just drew from my experience. Like,
You
fuck
just
you. I'm just drawing
right,
this shit.
right. Yeah, and by the way, like, has it turned from it being about converting that person into a graphic narrative, and now I'm sure you're in that character much more than
Uh,
that other person, right? I mean, like there's a point where like it starts really being a funnel for what you want to say rather than what that person was saying,
I
right?
think that person turned out to be just more of a caricature of itself because she was such a
Yeah,
terrible person that it's
right.
like some people have said to me, I can't believe that bitch exists. I said, no, she does. She really does these things.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like I've changed the name and obviously appearance of the person, so unless you know her, it's like you're not going to know it's her. And plus, she's
Yeah.
such an attention whore. It's like I'm not going to go give her that validation. I mean, she can pretend or try, but it's like how do you know it's her? Hey Lee, what's going? I hope I never become an enemy of yours. So it's like this people that have pissed me off by doing really awful fucking shit to people that I care about or even me. That's when I start doing it because it comes from a real place. It's like fuck you. Like they say, well, art is all high minded and you should get over it. It's like, no, have you looked at Michelangelo's Last Judgment? That shit wasn't nice. That's in a fucking church. Do you know the story about that?
No.
Okay. So this is even verified by the Catholic Church and the historians of Michelangelo. So what ended up happening was that Michelangelo, he was commissioned. He's been commissioned, I think, at least twice, maybe three times by the church to do stuff,
Oh,
artwork for the
wait a
church.
minute. Are you talking about where he put all the insults to no, major figures within the church and patrons of the church, and essentially like just to call attention to their corruption in the background of the works?
Not really that. There's
Okay.
one. It was even pettier than that. What it was is
Okay.
that he got asked when he was an older man to do the Last Judgment. He did the
Yeah.
ceiling, and that was when he was in his 30s. The one on the wall, he was in his 60s.
Right.
So this Pope commissioned him to do the Last Judgment. So he drew all the saints and all the things nude because it's like, okay, before the eyes of God, we're going to be judged. It doesn't matter. So that
Yes.
was his metaphor. Well, there was this one cardinal. I think he was an accountant or something, but one cardinal kept giving him shit
Right.
and just for 3 to 4 years, I think it was like 3 to 4 years, he worked on this. And they have to do the cartoon first, like the charcoal thing outline, and then section per section he paints the fresco, right? So, those are milestones of what we would do in our case, right? So
Right.
we would complete one panel, and this guy just every day was telling him, I'm going to make sure that these fucking things are covered up. You're a piece of shit, blah, blah. All sorts of crap that he had to take from this guy. So he saves the last panel for the King of Hell, Minos. So he draws that same fucking cardinal with donkey ears, ass ears, because this guy has such an issue with nudity, the snake's biting his dick. And that was him
Right.
going, fuck you. And that's the thing. And the guy was pissed, but it's like there was nothing he could do about it. So that's the point. It's like sometimes some shit, the best shit comes from reality. Like, Stephen King named the dude that fucking almost killed him with that van. You remember how he got hit by a van?
Yeah.
And he put the guy in one of the Dark Tower series and had him just killed off in the worst way possible. And the family got pissed and wanted to sue him, but he was already dead of an overdose, so it didn't matter. So there was that. And I'm not saying I would recommend that, but that's just what he did. So I found that funny that, so like when people tell me about fucking Demon Bitch, or beginning when I was starting to draw all this stuff, people are like, you should really let it go. You should stop being pissed. It's going to eat you up from the inside. It's like, this doesn't eat me up from the inside. Actually, it's really funny. It helps me deal with it. And it helps me go like, fuck you and your behavior, I mean, but it's not like I'm reaching the level of a bully where I'm like humiliating this person by name. And this person had given me plenty of material to base Demon Bitch on. And I had a number of friends that were women that were terrible. I mean, I'm no longer friends with them, obviously, but I just would basically draw shit like that, and then they like, oh wow, like, or other girlfriends of mine would tell me their stories about other women that were mean to them, and I draw this story on this character, and then they fucking love it,
Right.
or stupid shit girls do to each other, and I don't see why that I can't draw that. Like, it's weird because like the feedback from individual women, they love it because it's like, wow, you're right on this, you are right on the money. What people that fucking hate me are some women's groups that band together and they say, we got to go against the patriarchy and shit, and that's fine. But some of them have degraded into coffee clutch bullshit where it's like if I don't say the exact same things they do, they think I'm an asshole, and it's like, I don't care. Tired of you bitches,
Well,
whatever. Like Egg Lady, yeah.
Yeah. Although I guess the only thing I would say is that maybe the only positive lining to the whole thing is that everybody's essentially trying their best to do, they're trying to do their best to change things from a place of integrity. I think that what happens is though it's human emotions also get into it. And there's a lot of filters and.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying all women's groups suck. Just there's some that have this thing about, um, and as I said, I don't go into this very much, but like with some feminism, there's always been a discussion of like white women versus women of color. And there seems to be this level of condescension and victim enabling, not victim support. It's very different, but enabling. Like they say, well, men this, men that, blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, well, what are you going to do about it? We have, if you're victimized by men, okay, fine, that is a thing, but what are you going to do to change it? And sometimes I find them into bitching groups myself. And I'm not saying that like just because you said, oh, this terrible thing happened, you're bitching. I mean, I've had shitty fucking things happen to me too that were terrible. I won't get into detail about that, but it's like there's a point of thing where you get tired of telling that story. I'm not saying it's a made up story, just that phase in your life. So what are you going to do to move past it and heal and grow and be a stronger person? And I've had to do that with my own personal life. And again, it's not saying, oh, just because you're traumatized, you are weak. No, you're traumatized. Like, I tell friends of mine, especially women that have been stalked, I've been stalked before, and through my own personal experiences, like I've been harassed at a con before by one person. Right. Hey Joshua, what's up? Hey Quentin, you're gonna get tarred and feathered, laugh alone. Women's groups are going to get there. They can go fuck themselves. I don't care. Anyway, I mean, the thing is that when they talk to me, they go like, geez, I don't even do anything. I'm in a beanie and a sweatshirt. Why is this person stalking me? I said, look, you have to look at this realistically. I said, anytime you put on makeup, have an accomplishment. This goes for any sex or gender, right? Anytime you do something positive for yourself or something to say, I am here, I am a human being, I'm going to do what I love, or this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to live my life. You have things like parasites come out. What do they want? They want a healthy body. They want somebody well adjusted. Why? So they can feed off of you. I said, but in no means does this mean that you deserve it or they have a right to, because they only have a privilege of talking to you. But that privilege can be revoked at any time when they do not respect you. That goes for anybody. And I
Oh
told
yeah.
and I told them, it's like, I'm not going to tell you just take it, because that's fucking full of shit. Usually the people that they're the most like, oh, I'm all pro this, pro that, and then like when you really talk to them, like, okay, if somebody famous says somebody assaulted me, they're like, I'm with her, I'm with her. But you go and tell your story, because I've been assaulted too, and I've talked to some of those people that like are super like that. They go like, oh well that's your thing, and it's like, oh, so the level of fucking support you have, you know me better than these people, but you're just willing to throw your hat in the ring for these people. You know, it just it
Yeah.
shows how hypocritical that is. I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying a good number of people that are like that. So it's like, sometimes I've said to people like, if a person is not treating you with respect, they're not respecting your boundaries. And I say this to a lot of women, and I say, like, unfortunately with the stalking thing, it's an endurance test. You have to be as much of an asshole as they do. You have to keep reporting, you have to keep reporting, you have to keep reporting. You have to go and a history has to be built on this. It sucks, but that's how
There's
it
so
works.
many uh, uh, there's so many layers to the kind of thing you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I only know it, of course. Like I don't. I am not the demographic for getting stalked,
Yeah.
right? Right.
Well, it can
For
happen to anybody,
for both
really.
powerful. Well, for I mean for but even if just like I'm 6'2" and I'm like over 400 pounds and like there's just there's and I'm cis male. There's like a lot of reasons why I'm not gonna hit those marks that a lot of other people are just horribly put upon. Uh, but I was gonna say, like, the people who tell me stories, like, you know what I mean, like,
Yeah.
because we're all like geeks and stuff, and even in Vermont, I mean, we had some real issues with some folks. There's just so many layers to the whole thing because it's like there are people who are like psycho, and
Yeah.
there's
There.
that level, right? And then you've got like just the people who are like, all I did was X. I didn't know that was a big deal. Like,
Yeah.
and that is even its own insidious because you're talking about people who are like, like, oops, I did this, or like I didn't know, and it's like, so like I can only imagine how
Yeah.
many different fronts you have to
Well,
deflect on, and
that's
that's exhausting. That's got
that's
to be exhausting.
yeah. That's why I tell people, like, first of all, you have every right to
It's
tell them
terrible.
exactly what's going on and what's your
Yeah,
boundaries. Be very
yeah,
clear, and if the person still doesn't respect it, okay, then you just fucking you have to go to step two. And it's like, as I said, there's a history, because
yeah,
like sometimes, like, in the history, it was really easy to get a restraining order with somebody, like
yeah.
40 years ago. But now it's like super hard, at least in the state of California. Like, even if you
Why
have a
is it?
police,
Why is that harder?
I don't know, like the records that I've heard, and again, this is not saying that, I think one way was really easy to get at one point, and
Yeah,
now, like, even now, it's hard to prove. And maybe because it's the abuse of the system. But I
mm-hmm.
think when they tried to cut down on the abuse of the system, they didn't do it in a reasonable fashion. Like, some people were
Are
denied.
there that many people who actually have done that? I always tend to wonder that that's like kind of you know
Hey, Corey, what's up?
MRA bullshit rumor nonsense.
See,
But
here's the thing. It's like, I understand, like, if you just say, well, he called me a name. Well, okay,
yeah,
that's not enough. But if you have a police report, you have a record of this guy doing the thing to you, you have a record of counseling, you have a record of whatever, and yet you
yeah,
still don't grant this person a restraining order, then I find
yeah.
that stupid. But I mean, I understand, like, it's a serious thing. It can go on somebody's record, seriously. Like, oh shit, But at the
Well,
same time,
then don't do it, right?
yeah, and then, but the thing
Yeah.
is, if you have to call the cops, and this person has been
Right.
known to be belligerent and violent and has had a history of this,
Yeah.
like, and then they still don't grant it. Like, I had
Yeah.
to do that with one person, and this was years ago. This was like 20 years ago. And the judge said, you both need to get over him. Like, he fucking showed up at my house. Like, I never
So that
called
makes
him. I
people.
called the cops on him. Fuck him.
Yeah.
But being told I need to get over it. I mean, that's what I
So
find is
you
stupid.
actually had an officer in the court. You had a judge.
Yeah. say this.
to you.
Oh yeah.
So then that makes me, and then ask the question that at least in the state of California, and I think it probably would overlap with like Chicago, bigger cities, right? New York, whatever. Could there be a huge amount of what do you call it? Court appointed fatigue, like judges, DA offices, people, even certainly law enforcement. I mean, obviously, like the first responder, cop stuff. I mean, they're burnout beyond burnout, but like, is it possible that the court itself has such fatigue over it? And I'm not saying boo-hoo, because
no. It is what it is.
But I wonder if that's a practical issue that we're not, that maybe a lot of people aren't considering yet. Right.
In my interactions with the system, on that level, I think it's very horribly convoluted bureaucratically. Like, so I think that might be adding to it. It could be the sheer amount of case files.
Plus, good luck proving it, right? Because there's people that are actually monsters out there, and they're getting away with it because it's so hard to prove, right?
Well, but the thing is that
a defense attorney can be very skillful and.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have to put everything in context, okay?
Yeah.
A lawyer is not here to fight on the side of truth, justice, and I think people kind of build up these.
They're doing their job.
Well, I think a lot of people they tend to build up these expectations that are not realistic or that are somehow pedestalized on things. Like we think, oh, lawyers are supposed to go on the good and thing, and like, okay, here's the thing. We would hope laws do that. But the thing is, their job for however long it's been, at least in this country, is they just argue one case over another and who has evidence that you can't impeach, essentially, right?
Well, that's the nature of American jurisprudence.
I mean, just
they're
whatever.
They're supposed to argue for the client. They're not supposed to argue whether the client is. They're not supposed to consider the guilt or innocence of the client. Otherwise, you destroy the whole legal system.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like it's just like in what context, according to the definition of what it is.
It's like we know that, but apparently a crap load of adults haven't taken basic civics in school.
Well, they took that out, which is stupid, and I'm just like,
hey, it's never been fair. It's been just. The two words are extremely different.
Yeah, and the thing is that justice is blind for a reason.
Oh, sorry.
No, there's justice is blind for a reason. But the thing is that I think also people don't contextualize what stalking how you have to treat stalking. It's like, well, you get a restraining order and that's it, everything's fixed. It's like, no, you have to be just as persistent. The thing is that you have to be just as persistent as the perpetrator. And a lot of women that I have noticed go through this mental I'm not talking about men, but that's not because I don't think men get stalked. Men kind of go through their own thing, but the people that have come to me are women, a lot of them. And I said they have this mental fatigue and they kind of break down inside. And I said, look.
I mean, it's trauma. It's assault. It's a form of assault.
Yeah, it fucks with you. And I told them, look, it's okay. And they said, well, I'm stupid at being scared. I said, no, you're not. That is normal. I've been through that too. But I said, there comes to a point where it's like, does my life matter more than this person?
Right.
You just have to come to that. And it's not like, oh, I just say that person like, oh, well, you just have to go to that. And it's like, you can't just switch off emotions and feelings and triggers, but you can at least talk yourself through them where you can see yourself through in a much more stronger fashion, It's kind of like in football where the coach hypes you up. You kind of have to be your own coach mentally that way. Sometimes it's more harmful when other people, where there's support, and I'm not saying support is bad, but where they just say, well, you just need to go be a stronger person. It's like, that's not how you do it. Okay, do you understand? Like, so when I talk to women, I said, you have to get to a point. Yeah, it's just like, it's okay to be scared. It's okay to be freaked out. It's a very traumatizing thing. But here's the thing, you need to walk yourself through it. You need to mentally prepare. You need to keep a record on this person. You need to be that persistent. Because I think a lot of women are just told, oh, it's a one-time deal and it'll be finished in a matter. No, not all the time. But the thing is, they need to be taught persistence. And that's the thing that helps you win. It's not. I think that's with anything in life. Like,
well, I was just about to say, because this comes full circle to the other conversation we're having about self-promotion, and this is where I say, like, there are people who are equipped to do that. There are people who are not, and there's no amount of education or there's the eureka moment is never going to occur because of education. It's only going to happen because of it being the right moment, literally the right moment when somebody is, like in this case, got a little is out from under their trauma enough so that maybe they can pursue. That's why, like, there's a lot of states where, like, they had to change, like, rape reporting and stuff. Like, it's like you can't. Some people aren't ready. They can't even, like, get out. They can't even figure out what they're doing. It may take years before someone can report. Now, at least in some municipalities and states, that's you can legally bring a case under that. But there's so many women who are basically getting, like, broadsided because they weren't even prepared to be able to report for years, right? And then suddenly they're not able to get justice because of that, like all that stuff. I mean,
well, the thing is also
we're just not equipped to understand the degree to which trauma destabilizes people.
Like for me, like I've been through that situation before.
Yeah.
And the thing is that that it's legit on a certain level. Is that because unfortunately, having gone through it, and I'm just going to be pretty honest here, it's like if you've been through it, you've healed through it, you've survived past it, right?
Right.
You get to a point where, like, even though there's little holes and bits in what happened, aside if you've been drugged or whatever, but over years they'll come together to form a cohesive story of what exactly happened. And it's fucked up and sad, but the people that lie about it, their stories will disintegrate over time. Because it's like they'll say things and you say, well, what about this? And this is not like, oh, you can't remember you lied or, oh, you misplaced it. But it's like if they come with a thing like, oh, that person was never there. And here they are in the video thanking them and you could hear that person there. You're just like, and unfortunately that happens. I mean, we look at the cautionary tale To Kill a Mockingbird. We know this, like, do whatever motives, like this woman accused this man of rape and he couldn't physically do it in the way how she described it because he literally had a physical in it. He could not perform that act physically because she said he held her down and he hit her with his right arm, and they proved in court like they threw a ball at him and he caught it with his left hand. So how come he can't catch it with the right hand? He said, I ripped out my arm. My arm is useless. And it happened to them when he was a kid. So way before she did that. So it's hard because I think we're starting to kind of really take a real look at that now. And, when you are a victim of assault, you have chunks missing. You have certain things because you physically cannot go and explore that because you are too traumatized. But over time, when you go through and you heal through it and you get through the trauma, I don't want to say just get over it, then it comes together and it's like, okay, this is exactly what happened. And is more cohesive and it adds up rather than somebody who lies like that. Well, this person did, and they're very vague. And then you're like, okay, but then over time you find out that's not the case. And it's proven either by physical means or by actual, like, their story keeps, like, changing, but in a way that does not make sense. Like, here's a piece of puzzle, here's these puzzle pieces, this piece fits in, okay, that's good. Or maybe there's another piece. But it's like you have put two pieces and none of them match up. And you're like, that's a little weird, And again, I'm very silent, unfortunately, with stuff like that because very publicized cases like that tend to, a lot of the times, be false reports, which is terrible because people who have actually gone through that, they don't feel supported at all.
Yeah, and then there's also, situations where, maybe there's a false claim, but there's actually some truth to it because people get they're so traumatized by the actual event, memories are they
well, that's what I mean.
Up or like you're saying, and the law is not equipped very well still yet to understand or even figure out what to do with that.
And I think when the law tries to change it, they don't understand enough about human psychology to adequately put it into law, I think. Like, nobody really sat down and thought about this on the way through. And I don't know if they've asked people that are survivors, like, well, this is what happened, So it's interesting just talking about this. Like, that's why I like lunch hours, because, like, I like throwing that dialogue out there. It's not just one thing or the other. It's like, look, we have to think it through and be real about what exactly happens. We're not discounting anybody's story, but we're talking about, like, this might be a better path to do things rather than just putting a Band-Aid on it. And that's also what I think of, like, the legal system in general. Sometimes in this country, we don't sit there, we don't rework laws, we just throw a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah, and part of that also is because legislators aren't experts in anything, and they're just, even if they're doing their best, they're just basically trying to wade through a bunch of facts that somebody presents to them, and then maybe do the right thing. I mean, where I come out with some of this stuff is childhood abuse and trauma stuff.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And no, yeah, and it's the subject for a long-term graphic novel project. The therapy is producing, the impulse to want to make a book out of it, right? So I'm thinking about this a lot more. I mean, I've been doing therapy forever, but I just mean that these kinds of things that we're talking about, although not the specific stuff that we started talking about, are very much on my mind. And the idea of memory, and the idea of, like, even like when you commit a life story to narrative, there are going to be things that are going to be different than the actual real story. And if you want the real story, then you're going to have to, reach for a videotape that doesn't exist, right? Yeah. So, and everybody's entitled to validity and sort of acceptance by others about their story. Like, it's like your story as opposed to maybe the story may not always match, but the trauma is there, and so it's almost like we have to navigate these things in a much more with a lot more compassion and with a bigger viewpoint on it, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, for me, I think also, and I don't mean to interrupt.
To enforce the law,
yeah, and I don't mean to.
The law can't recognize those subtleties.
Yeah, and like I think we're just starting to realize there's a difference between real compassion and doormat compassion too.
Yeah, sure.
And it's like now we're realizing, like, we always had things called incels, right? We've always had.
Yeah.
And there were always some asshole that lived in somebody's, like, living in mommy's basement typing on the computer, or whatever the fuck we used to say back in the day. Sure. But it's like we're realizing that we have to kind of look at our relationships realistically with people. Like, as one person described it, it's like you go up, like, I guess the most famous example, I'm not saying it's the only example, women probably have their own share of incels too. It's like, I do everything for you, you complete me, I will do all these things for you. Yeah, but what do you have to offer? You're going to say you're going to do all the things and you hold this person in high regard, but what do you have to offer them? Do you have your life? Are you a good person? Are you this? I'm a great person, I'll do everything for you. That's not the same. Usually people that I met that they would say they would do everything for me and all, after a while, I don't think anybody can really live up to that. That's unrealistic. Like with your girlfriend, or if I had a partner, it's like if I said, I'll do everything for you. Well, at one point, when are you going to expect something, Everybody's going to expect something, And that's a little bit different by being selfish. I think selfish people, they kind of have to lie about it, or they gloss it over to show that they don't have any needs. And it's like, look, everybody has needs, everybody has wants, everybody has expectations. Let's be realistic about that. So where do we go from here, Does it work with you? Do I actually like you as a person? Are you actually cool? Can we talk to each other? But if some guy comes up to me and says, I will do everything for you and I totally love you, I'm like, okay, I don't know you. Sorry, I'm not going to just go after that. But I really feel, okay, great, but you have to be a fully functional human being by yourself, So, I mean, it doesn't mean like if you're going through shit, you're not, but you get what I mean. It's just like that sort of incel mindset, I think, that can be engendered. And I think women, when they think about it, they think a guy, like, I've seen women do this in my peer group where they go like, well, this guy keeps calling me and he annoys me and everything and blah, blah, blah and everything. But then they'll turn around and say, like, I wish a guy really called me to say that he thought about me. And I'm not talking about the thirsty, crazy stuff. Christie, but I totally love you. Oh, thank you. But what I mean is like they'll say like, oh, this guy, he just wants to hang out and, blah, 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 and this, and this. I was like, okay. But then later on they say, I wish a guy would really let me know how he wanted me. I'm like, but you kind of have that here. I'm really confused. So you either have to be more specific about how you want a guy to express how he wants you, where he's coming from, rather than just a guy who's thirsty. So it's like I see that, and it's like, okay, well, what do you really want? Take a time to do that. You know.
So does all of the stuff that we've just been talking about for a while, does that end up coming down into the comics?
I really think so because it's like stuff I think about. Because even though Demon Bitch is about a bitch I hated, right? Or personal
Mm-hmm.
monsters or anything, I think it does get into my writing. Like, what drives people? Like, if I go and watch something on TV or read a book, like, how do I know if a person's needy? Or do they have aspects of them that I can sympathize with? Or they're just somebody that's just going to be a write off because they're totally narcissistic. Like, there's sometimes, like, when you read about synopsis of characters, right? And you say, okay, this character, she's this, and this, she's frivolous, blah, blah, blah. This guy, he's just like fucking what is there to life. But when you really read the character development, like, you can't relate to them because you can't even see the real points of what would make them frivolous to you or anything. They're just kind of cardboard cutouts. So with me, it's like when I do write characters or represent characters, I try to do it in a way, in a realistic semblance, because like for a while I didn't see that, but now I do. So it's kind of like, how do you see that? How do you do it? You know, it's kind of a surprise, you know? So it's like, for me, it comes into it of the thing of like, why, what motivates the character? And that sounds cliche, but like, what makes it real compared to the other times it's not real? Like, how can I get this for you to kind of understand the character and connect with them, even if you may hate them?
See, where this is not yet a thing for me is that the work that I'm doing currently, and maybe I'll share my screen in a second,
All right.
because I probably can't make out who this is. Okay. These are other people's stories, right? So, like I was saying, like, this is the gig that I've been hired to do. The other material, like,
Mm-hmm.
hold on a second.
Sure.
There we go. The Doc Holliday book is a contrived piece of genre fiction.
Yeah.
There's real stuff in it, hopefully, because hopefully characters act in ways that are spontaneous and interesting and not, like straight out of a particular playbook, right? But it's certainly not, it's certainly not reality, I guess, for any, I think accepted way of putting, that word down there. But this stuff is about taking people's stories and making them digestible for the public to understand, right? So that like somebody can understand what they're going through. A previous project that I did, which I think I'm going to call up, put up on the screen, is it was migrant workers in the state of Vermont. We have just like any state that has ag or in this case it's dairy. There's a need for migrant workers, and people are here, and obviously it's a hot topic. These folks are very isolated. There's all kinds of reasons why it's very difficult. In the state of California, you're obviously you know about the subject. It's really
Yeah.
but taking somebody's life and saying, okay, we're going to take this person's life and we're going to make a comic out of it because it's going to serve both their own community because it was a bilingual book. So in this case, in this story, the particular family that I got given, did the series of interviews with these people, and in this case, it was a father and son, and the father and son have been without the mother since she abandoned the family years, like when the child was born, practically. So it's been two of them, and they're going from migrant job to migrant job, and they've been in Vermont for a while, and the kid's going to high school, junior high and high school. So this is a story about basically the repetitive theme. I mean, there's the history stuff, but the repetitive theme is what's going to happen if I get picked up by immigration? What will happen to my kid? And like, here's an example. Sometimes I go to play in this basketball, right? Then afterwards, all the kids go to their parents, and I'm just there. I'll go to the boss's wife or something, but I want my dad to be there. and the father's like, I feel the same way, but I also know that that's not possible, right? We've talked about what would happen if I was picked up, you know, and what if he gets taken away, right? And so the thing that I'm dealing with, or the closest thing to reality that I'm dealing with, is sort of taking, like this, somebody might go to jail, and I've got to give some credibility to their story and make it readable in a very short page count, but also don't not be manipulative or all those things that you're not supposed to do, right? But somehow also make a narrative that works, right? That's hard to do. If I was doing my own story or just pulling in everything around me, which is what clearly that you're doing with the character, because even though the character's this character and it's the demon or whatever, there's all this, your environment's going into the story, right? That's a different kind of integrity, because you're allowed, you are at least allowed to play with it more. You can be playful more in that respect, I think, and that I would assume that has to be more liberating, right? Because with this kind of thing, it's a lock-in situation. You go off the ranch and you're either potentially making problems or you're being completely, indifferent to their situation, right?
Well, I think as the role of a good storyteller, you have to kind of pick on the thing of, not only your own experiences and what you've learned, but what you kind of have to kind of step back and say, okay, from what I've seen of other people, and I'm not trying to do the blank of, oh, people suck, because I get annoyed with that shit already. Oh, everybody just is terrible. Oh, everybody's good. No, then you haven't. You're just pushing your own viewpoints on other people. But if you think, okay, if I could take a step out of the shoes and what this person has shown me, and by kind of copying that in my head, putting a construct in my head of who they are, not aside from my prejudices, this is just in general, person's habits and everything, how does that fit? I mean, I might be oversimplifying it, because I've thought about it too. You just kind of have to sort of take that, make a construct of the person, that what you've seen of other people. And I think any storyteller probably has talked about this, and it's sort of you kind of go okay, it's kind of like running a program. I know that sounds inhumane, but you get what I mean. All these variables, all these things, that what you've known of people do, what you've known of people, talking to people in the subset, if you have, or just kind of listening to it, or just looking at, observing people's behavior, what would you expect that person to do in this situation? So, but you have to also understand, you're in your brain, it's a construct in itself. It's not going to be perfect, but I think it's a more real way of telling a story. But, and again, I'm probably sounding like I'm oversimplifying things, but it's it's a really real way of telling a story. I think it's the most real way without sounding preachy or proselytizing. And I think the one thing you don't want to do is do a proselytizing thing, because people really get turned off in general if you try to talk at them instead of to them. And as long as you talk to a person to them, then that's when you can insert new stuff. And that's what I tend to do. Even though I'm doing demon bitch and it's mean and it's making fun of a bitch I hated, but I'm talking to people hey, this is what this person did to me, and they laugh because it's holy fuck, this is what happened to me too. So when you talk to people, they can relate to it. And I think that's what it is. It's it's not saying, oh, you're bad, you're terrible. I've even had people that say, oh, I'm demon bitch. I'm
that's me, yeah, right.
Yeah, so it's I make it a point not to talk to people. I mean, talk at people. You want to talk to people about your story. Because if people don't have a connection with your story, then they aren't having it, They're not going to, it's just, as much as they'd like to try to say they're open-minded, they're not going to listen to you. And it's not because they're rude. They just cannot connect with it. Yeah. So that connection point is to tell a good story, you have to connect with them on a certain level. Now, with some situations, I read the book Crash. It was an erotic book, and I say that very loosely,
Ballard.
But by Ballard. But the point of the book was, it was disconnection. Even though he's talking about sex acts, you're not turned on. You're just it's just this sort of weird mechanical apparatus hanging in front of your eyes. But
Yeah.
that's the
I mean,
point.
the whole thing was about people that got really screwed up, and they had to find some way to reconnect with other human beings.
But even then, that was a weird disconnection in itself too. It
Yeah,
was
oh
like,
yeah.
but it was just more of a physical, even though physical and emotional connection can be very intertwined. But it was so separated at this point that it was almost bisected. Like, even if I'm describing this highly intimate act between two people, it's like,
Yeah, I just meant that, like, there's a lot of people who take that book superficially as just this kind of like, pre-cyberpunk erotic novel or something, and they don't understand really what's going on there, and they don't understand what Ballard was getting
I mean, I guess it,
across. This is the kind of stuff that you're talking about.
yeah, I mean, I guess they kind of, I can see where it could be possibly cyberpunk, like, because there's new modes of intimacy versus new modes of disconnection.
Yeah,
So I could see it on that level, but I am not into
but
the,
the
yeah.
but the book is really about, and the book is about what the kind of stuff that you're talking about. I mean, it's about these really these people desperate for connection, and
Yeah, because they've done all these things. They're kind of libertines and they've done all these things, but it's like it no longer, they're just kind of going through the motions.
also, I mean, because literally they just went through this hyper like traumatic, physical traumatic event, and
Uh-huh.
they're really screwed, and it's messed up with their head. It's like it's the recovery of PTSD all over again, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's like there's so much of his stuff that's actually, you can easily look at it through that lens. It's like
Yeah.
Ballard is a, I mean, look at his origins, right? I mean, with his childhood,
Yeah.
surviving the Japanese invasion in
Yeah,
China.
Empire of the Sun.
And yeah, I mean, like, he the first fundamental act in his life was surviving under the most, like, brutal, well, one of the most brutal situations, and it's like he had his own Bosnia to get through, and then he had
Yeah.
to become a so-called regular person again. And I think everything since then has just always been down the tunnel of, it's essentially recovery. Everything that he writes about is essentially like very weird, either adaptive or maladaptive ways for people to, like, sort of fumble through the recovery.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like we have to kind of understand the human brain is interesting in this regard. It's like we want to go. There's one part of us that are animals, but then there's another part of us that goes beyond that. So we are kind of at its dual natures. Like, do we go and do fight or flight? But we have to acknowledge, okay, this is what we got to do, in order to get the thing done. And sometimes I think there's an overly pragmatic view you have to take. Now, people go and say, oh, well, that means you don't have any feelings or emotions. I said, no. You have to be pragmatic and factor those in. Pragmaticism to me is just like, okay, let's cut out the bullshit and let's see what's going on. Obviously, emotions are a factor because they're the ones that drive us a lot of the time, whether or not we want to acknowledge it. Okay,
Well,
well, are
sure.
these emotions are grounded? Like, will they serve ultimately what they want to do? you know it doesn't mean that the absence of emotion is a good thing. I don't think it is, because you have a lot more damaged people that go through life going, oh yeah, like, there is no such thing as emotion, it's good to not have emotions. Like, I don't agree with that. Then you have a very empty life, because people do have emotions. A lot of very functioning human beings do, and the fact that if you're not acknowledging them, then that's something that's not good you know
I mean, it's just an understandable kind of wish, like, sort of wish, fantasy, dream thing to have when you're eyeball deep in the shit. That's all. It's just, it's like it's like this. It's the sort of scripts that you hear over and over again, which is like, I wish I didn't have emotions. I wish I didn't. Yeah, well, that'd be great, but it's not like that in your person, and it's just really hard to be a human being. It's really hard,
yeah, and I think
and
that's I
it's
think
just how it is.
yeah, I think that, like, with
Good luck. We're all in it. Just doing
yeah,
what you can do.
yeah, like with like, I think that's where religion has attempted to try to do that. I
Yeah.
mean, religion comes with its own subset of issues, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying a very simple thing. Like, religion in itself is like, I think it has tried to kind of quantify that, but it's not, it only can go so far you know and now we've reached the age where we're kind of having to be more and more self-aware. And I've always talked and I said, look, we've had a lot more personal power than we ever have. Now it's like, and like, the thing is, back in the day, for example, if we're going to go back to gender, the thing is that back in the day, people knew where they stood in this way, which is men did this, women did that. I'm not saying it's good or bad, it just is what it is, right? I'm not saying we have to go back to that. But nowadays, it's different, you know? I mean, yeah, we have always been individuals, but now it's like, now it's more up to us to say, these are my boundaries, stop. This is what I want to do, stop, you know, or whatever. And so we don't have that construct so much, or at least set in stone anymore. So now it's kind of a little bit frightening for people, you know, on some level. It's like, well, I thought you would react this way. It's like, no, I am this. And you have a lot of other people that are different. It's not a quantifiable or easily relatable source, if that makes sense. Like, you know, for whatever
Oh, yeah.
it is.
Yeah, it's you know, things are just things are a lot more complicated as we attempt to actually do, again, better work with integrity than we've been doing in previous generations. You know,
Yeah.
we're trying to do a lot of things, even if we're doing it badly. We're trying to do a lot of things right now that people didn't even have the bravery to try to do in the in the '60s counterculture days. Um, it's a very interesting time, but it comes with its consequences, in that people are having a real hard time of it,
Yeah.
you know, and that's just how it is, you know, and plus, you know, we live under a system that basically turns people into raving lunatics from about 6 in the morning till whenever they get out of work.
Yeah.
They can't afford to, like, you know, take care of their parents or themselves with health problems. You know, all these various different things, and it's all very, very rough on the human nervous system. It is hard. This is not the kind of thing that anybody is designed to endure. And so, you know, and then we're trying to do all this political stuff. We're trying to do all this social manipulation, trying to make things better for people, even if it's whether it's gender stuff or if whatever it is, economic equality, whatever. So, I mean, I will say, like, in some ways, I'm really proud to be a human right now, only because people are trying so goddamn hard, in spite of the fact that it's so goddamn hard, right? Like, that's a pretty fascinating thing. You know, in many different cultures through history, it would have been perfectly acceptable to just throw the spade into the ground and say, the hell with it, fuck it, you know, this is how it is, things are unjust, I eat mud, and that's it, right? But people are really fighting, and I think that is what encourages me, that people fight at all. And that's kind of, I know that sounds probably Pollyanna, but that's what interests me, is that people are actually more willing to say no, you know, these things matter. It is not okay, and it's about fucking time to change this, that, whatever it is, you know. So that's, and then, you know, but it doesn't change the fact that, you know, if you get these different things on your back, it is hard to process them, and it's hard to get through them.
I think also,
and even if you're the people that are doing the wrong thing, you know, it's not easy to be on the side of the wrong and getting somebody correcting you every 5 seconds because, you know, you're doing something stupid.
Yeah.
To be fair, I mean, just, you know, in that respect, it is hard.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah. What do you mean I can't say that anymore? Well, you can't say it anymore because it's time to fucking stop saying it. You know?
Yeah.
Like, it was okay, and we all had our fun, and that's not cool, but now it's time to stop.
Yeah, I
Right?
mean,
Yeah.
That's the thing nowadays, I think.
Like, it's okay to stop.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like nowadays I think people are kind of, I think we're just taking a closer look at what we do. And I think like we're kind of thinking of things in a new way, but I think we're thinking in a way that before our forefathers never really had to. Like, yeah, the Enlightenment, and people are like, well, you know, there's that. I said, yeah, but we don't have this thing called the internet now. We have this thing called the internet now, so it's forcing us to kind of look at things in a more of a mass quantity. So we have to kind of like we have to kind of increase our brain capacity in a greater thing to accept and or dismiss and or think through things. And we're going to have to go and do this thing. We have much more free control of like being able to shut off at certain times, you know, so we can process these things.
Right. then that's the other part, which is that you cannot constantly be a sort of emotionally or in a social justice wave, and you can't pull all-nighters all week long. There are going to be times when you're going to just have to have downtime, and
Yeah.
And that's hard when you know that everything is so goddamn important all the time. And, again, like can't lose any ground, and there's a lot of perceptions of that too. Like, oh my God, you can't stop because if you stop, then we're all screwed, right?
Well, and we have to kind of look.
Hard.
Yeah, we kind of have to look at perception too, because like what they were saying was like Facebook kind of gives this perception that, oh, I'm doing shit all the time. Like I don't think about it. I just post up events that I do or things that I do, and people say, wow, you're really busy. You're on all the time. I say, really? I don't think about it because this is my life. This is what I choose. This is one facet that I choose to show. And if you talk to me, there's that, but there's times I have a lot of downtime. So I just think it's interesting when people kind of have this weird perception on Facebook of like what people do. Sometimes I find myself like, oh, this person went to this party. How come I'm not at this party? Networking and all that. And then I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I'm going to live my life.
It's an unfair filter anyway,
Yeah.
because for both parties, because the device is designed to over bombard you with stimulation and information, and the receiver, it changes their common sense to think that that's going on all the time too. It's like it's bad for everybody. I think in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
All this up to date information is first of all not necessarily as up to date as people think, nor is it actually information.
Yeah.
Like,
well, some of it's just fluff.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I mean, I totally agree. I think it sets people up to think that everybody is cranking and busy and all this stuff um, when that's just really the signal that keeps you looking. That's just the enticement thing working. It's magic. There are the people that actually are on all the time, and usually that is their job, but that's not everybody, obviously. But it is overtaxing people, because that's where it's interesting, because what you're talking about, it just made me think, like, all these people that are really burnt down on their phones and all this other stuff, they're trying to actually juggle a 9 to 5, or let's say their job is to be a home provider or whatever it is, right? Plus like homework if they've got school stuff going on, all these other things. And suddenly in like 6 years, it's just expected that everybody be a social media influencer level engager on the internet, right? So like this other thing, everybody just kind of just woke up one day and it was like, I've got repetitive injury in my arm and my hand, and I'm trying to work, and I'm trying to do the job of being a social media content generator, when all that really means is that I'm just a good cog in the machine for Facebook or whatever, because they desperately need more and more data. So we're data miners, and we don't even get the benefit of the Bitcoin at the other end.
Yeah.
And then everybody else thinks like, oh my God, Christie's on all the time. She's doing so much online. I better catch up. And just sets everybody up for being crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's just it's just I compartmentalize it with this. And you have to kind of look at it generational wise. Like for me, I'm kind of like off generational wise. I'm technically Gen X. So I know enough of Gen X, but I've had to adapt to millennials as well. Like, I was of a generation we called people. Now it's like, text me first. I'm like, okay. Like for me, I tell people text me first, but that's just because I'm in this space where I have to kind of do the thing, like I've got to do that to engage with millennials, but I've also got to understand, like from my non-tech standpoint, personal connection is better. But I've told people, and even like, I think the whole dismissal thing, either by the media or whatever, it was like one of those deals where they say to me, it's like even the older generation is willing to try to do a little more, like to connect with the younger generation. I don't think it's as striated as everybody makes it out to be, or at least the media, right? So for me, what I do is like sometimes like I'll tell people, look, you can call me, I'm fine, but sometimes I'm busy, so text me first if it's a quick question that I can answer. That way I can just answer it, because sometimes I'm in a place where I can't pick up the phone.
Right.
Where it has gotten a little bit, it has gotten a little bit annoying to leave a message for somebody as we used to. So for what I do is I compartmentalize text messages and IMs as my answer machine. It's like, okay, shoot me a text, shoot me this, send me an email. But I am willing to go meet that person face to face. I don't have that phobia about it. But it's interesting to me, like if I just call somebody, they're like, oh yeah, well, you need to text me first. I only call very, very rarely. I'm like, okay. But that's just how I'm kind of like this conduit in the middle ground where I grew up for a good part of my young life without the internet. And then when I hit high school, college, that's when it started. So I know when to unplug, but there are other people that aren't as plugged in as me. So it's interesting. Anyway, to say the least. Hold on, let me get this real quick. But yeah, so it's one of those things. Ugh. Sorry, I'm sneezing a lot too. But anyway, it's about 2:10. We've had a great long talk. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't give you like the cool hipster comic book talk.
Oh,
we
fucking.
ended up in the like save the world, human being talk.
Well, that's what I like about these talks. Bless you, because you can't control the will of others. Wolverine, X-Men, evolution. But the thing is that, it's just, I think that's why my work is popular, is that it's just real. I don't bullshit about what it is. I don't try to say, well, I want to target this towards women behind this. I'm like, I'll write the story and I'll fucking target it later. How about that? I'm not interested in writing something. It sounds weird because I'm talking about selling, but really I'm writing it for me. I'm writing it because I want to get it out and I like it. That's what makes me write a good story. That's always what I've had. And that is what I just want. And so far, it's like people like that. So, hold on.
No, it's okay.
Give me a moment. Give me a moment. I'm also doing some other stuff too. So, yeah. So that's all I'm saying is that you can't go out of your way to. Give me a moment. Yeah, so it's just like you've got to just do the thing. So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's all we can do. So now, tell me about the kids book that you're doing.
Oh, right now it's
Is
called
that doing its thing?
Old Stripey. It's about an old raccoon that lives in the LA County. Well, don't want to say LA County Courthouse, but that's what it's based after. And it's
Oh,
basically
it's a real thing. That's like a local
yeah, it's a local thing.
thing.
An old Stripey is a little old raccoon that lives in the courthouse, and he has little adventures. And he thwarts a robbery, basically. So I'm just drawing the kids' book based on that.
So was this like a thing that was commissioned by the
Writer.
community somehow? The right. Oh.
For the writer, he just wanted to write about his times and his experiences at a courthouse, and so he decided to come up with a raccoon called Old Stripey.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was cute. So I'm just doing that.
Are you getting more all ages kind of stuff to do?
I do mostly. I don't know. It depends on what comes. Like I have some people that want me for the kids' books, but mostly it depends on the person. I think it's mostly people in their 30s and things.
I meant like for the outside stuff.
Yeah, for the outside stuff. Yeah.
The hired stuff.
Yeah.
And what are you usually doing with hired stuff? Is like just commissions, or is it full like storytelling stuff, or is it or design work, or?
I would say it's a combination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it's either storyboards or it's well, fortunately, lately I've been getting a little more of these comic things to do.
Mm.
I mean, I was when I wasn't disabled, I was doing design work and, just slamming pixels around. And before that, I was working paste up, and I go back way before computer. So I haven't really. The only straight jobs I ever had was one time I worked for a department store where you went up and people like put in their orders and you had to go up to the warehouse and get their stuff for them. And it's called service merchandise. That was my first job out of high school, like the summer when I got out of high school. And then the other real job that I had was, what did I do? I worked at a video rental store a couple times, and a men's clothing store, a big men's store, and so fitting guys that didn't know anything about how to clothe themselves. And then the last non-art job I did was I worked at a restaurant for 3 years as a line cook and a manager at a restaurant. But I mean, like, those jobs were like literally with many years between them, right? Everything else was always art related, including, the years right after getting out of high school was being a freelancer and stuff. So I didn't know anything else. Like, I'm not really functionally good at anything else, Maybe if it was a therapist, I think I probably could be a licensed counselor, maybe, but that would just drain the shit out of me.
Yeah.
I know that for sure. But yeah, I was lucky. I think in coming up in the '80s, before computer stuff, and with the economy where it was possible to be a freelancer and push away, regular 9 to 5 stuff for a long time.
Yeah.
So, I was lucky in that respect. I'm not lucky that I'm disabled, but of course that does mean that I have an income that I can rely on, and it allows me to pursue my art, which is, it may not be financially meaningful, but it's still really meaningful for me, and it allows me to work on projects that really count for me.
Yeah.
And then take on paid stuff, for the extra dough, as I can. So, in that respect, I consider myself a lucky person. You can have a successful career without it being in the conventional sense of the word. But again, like you were saying, I should say, right off the bat, when we get together here, you really just have to know what it is that you want, and you have to know. But additionally, you have to know how you're going to satisfy yourself. Like, you have to know the way in which you will justify your satisfaction. You don't just get satisfaction.
Yeah, like you have to work up to it.
Yeah, I mean, you have to say, this is what will satisfy me. Like, if you don't do that, then you will be crestfallen and never happy. It's like, that's another thing I think a lot of artists don't understand, is that it actually is necessary for the artist to say, these are the conditions under which I will be happy. And you have to kind of like make that contract with yourself and then be happy, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not just like, oh, happiness will just sort of happen in this kind of like natural way.
No, that's not how it works.
Blah.
You do have to put some work out for it.
Yeah, I mean, and even in terms of just like deciding what that means.
Yeah.
But that's just grown up stuff. Like, that's basically what that amounts to. And that's why there's a number of artists that are never going to be able to get there, because they have to kind of, that's the pragmatic part that comes into play, I think,
Yeah. You just got to get to a point.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to be like in your 40s or something, or your 50s before you figure it out.
Well, I think like also when people say, well, if you didn't hit it when you were 20, then you're washed up. I said, no, like a lot of shit that you... Bullshit. Yeah, like when you hit 20, you don't know fucking shit. And then I can say this because I've been 20. And then when you hit 40 or something, you're just like, oh shit, that was stupid,
Yeah. I mean, fortunately, if you can hit it big and make stuff when you're 20, 30 years old, you've got a lot of physical energy to throw into it. You can pound a lot of sand, which is why that's a good time. In general, that's why most people, that's when they get their shot, right? And that's when they kind of like start rolling it together. But the idea that now it's like it was in the 80s or 90s or before that where like, oh, if you didn't hit it by a certain age date, you were screwed. No,
Yeah.
that's absolutely not true.
No.
No. I mean, look at all the vanity authors that then end up with a book deal. You know, you got actors who are starting careers at 50 or something like that. It's definitely a different place now.
Yeah. So I wouldn't go and say like, oh yeah, it's this, because it's not.
No, no. But I do think, the only thing I would say is just, like, it's always like, because this is just what I tell people because they've got a lot of dreamy dreams and stuff, and like, the only thing I ever say is like, just be prepared about what could happen if nothing happens. And can you be happy? Is there a set of ways in which you can be happy if nothing happens?
Yeah.
If you have that under your belt, like, there's nothing that can take you down. Like,
Yeah.
other than real life shit. Somebody dumps you, somebody dies, whatever. I'm not talking about that stuff. But I mean, like, in terms of, like, what you want to do, if you can sit there and say, like, okay, there's this condition that I've set up where, like, if nothing ever happens and only, like, 200 people in the world or less read my thing, I'm still really fucking psyched.
Yeah.
If you can build that, there's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of flexibility, and there's also a lot of, like, you can actually be relaxed a little more.
Yeah.
In ways that you need to be relaxed in order to, like, kind of be healthy and not have a hole in your stomach.
Yeah.
Yeah, so. And that's stuff that I had to learn. Like, I had to learn early on that my style was not going to be Marvel and DC back when that meant something to me when I was a kid. And then I had to learn that, I probably was never going to be the fastest person in the world, so that was another thing that was going to get me out of, like, monthly comics of any kind. So then I got adjusted to that, and then later I got adjusted to other things. And when I finally got really clear about what was my real strengths, then I was able to, like, turn it from, like, a glass half empty to a glass half full kind of position, because then I was able to, like, turn it around. It took a long time to do that,
Yeah.
and I just, if there's anything I wish that would happen for a lot of people getting into what we're doing, is just, like, figure out how to be really successful in your mind before, like, any of this other stuff, because chances are it might not happen. You got to figure out how a way to navigate that anyway.
Well, I just sat down there and says, you know what, I want to do the thing, so why don't I just do the thing?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't try to put too much on it, really.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't put too much on it, really. I just kind of do it.
Well, yeah, but you do it really well, and you put a lot of work into it, and and that shows, right? It's like,
but it took me a few times of failure to do it, so you just got to do it again. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. Just do it, everybody. Just do it.
Just do the thing. Hey, Jeff, how's it going? Yeah. So, yeah, but guys, it is now 2:22, and I guess we will jump off then.
Yeah, I gotta slam into the work. I'm sorry, like, again, that I didn't have, like, beautiful, brilliant things to share screens with and all the rest of the things that we usually do.
There's always another time. I mean, I'd like to have you back. I mean, just as long as there's a
Yeah.
constant dialogue and we're drawing, it's fine. I don't follow a certain formula, just as long as we have an engaging and constant conversation. It doesn't always have to be constant, like we could be drawing. I just go with the flow of conversation. I don't try to control it too much.
It would just be fun to be able to share art and sort of check each other's work out.
Oh yeah, totally.
So that's what I'd like to do if we can talk again.
Yeah, definitely. Like, let me know.
And thanks a lot to Lawrence Hubbard again. Please, thank you for doing what you did and continue to do. And I'm so happy to finally make that connection. And was it Douglas and Quentin and Rory and.
Oh, here's my kitty. She pets me to pet her.
Yeah, and thanks a lot for the nice words. And again, if you want to check out my stuff, there's links everywhere in this Lunch Hour page, and it's easy to follow up on me. And thank you so much for giving me an opening into your world and an opening to your friends and stuff like that on the internet.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's good to have met you, and I'm glad I met another friend through Steve. See, this is my black cat right here. She's the one with a big ass.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, so there we go. But yeah, no, I appreciate you guys. Appreciate it. And Ink or Spam. This is Ink. This is the black cat. Quentin. Quentin is always asking about my cats. I think he's a bona fide animal lover.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thanks a lot for having me on.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll definitely talk again soon. Just let me know.
That'd
So,
be great.
all right, guys. You have a good day, and we'll talk to you then.
See ya.
All right.